So when we were at Outdoor Retailer this winter, I think how many of you are familiar with the Venture Out space? Everybody here? Okay, Scott McGuire is going to be here tomorrow, creator of that space. I was wandering around, just exhausted. I was doing all kinds of things, and it was towards the end of the evening. I had a couple of drinks already, and I just went, all right, I'm going to look around and see who I haven't seen. See who I don't know in the Venture Out space. And I just walked right towards this booth that had these amazing photographs and great clothes and whatnot, but I was really into the photographs, the black and white travel shots and whatnot. I just walked right up to the booth. I was like, this looks really cool. And this guy, Ryan, just walks up and goes, hi. And I'm like, this is awesome. What are you doing here? And I was looking through his book, and he took me right through it. And it's one of those things that felt a bit serendipitous to me. Like, this is how we often really stumble across what we want for this space here in Struktur Event. And when I looked at it, it was really like, I just saw great travel photos. Like, we travel, we go places that we want to go to, we experience things, we meet the people, and then we get inspired and we come back and we make stuff based off of it. And I said, oh my God, that's just like tea collection, my favorite clothes for my kid. Like, I get to teach him about Munich and wherever they're doing the next collection from. And to me, that was something I had a dream about when I was actually pregnant with my son 3 years ago, that I wanted to create a line for kids that was, or for people too, that was inspired by these things to help teach and learn. And so I was really inspired by what these guys were doing, that it just embodied to me what is going on. It's like, let's get out there, let's do stuff, let's be real, let's just do what we want to do, and then create what we want to create. So I was really inspired to invite Ryan Hitzel here from Roark Revival and have him talk with you today. So welcome.
Thank you. Hi. I honestly thought we'd be drinking beers right now. Next time. So I'm a little nervous, but I'm relatively sober, so I could get lost a few times, but I'll find my way. So I'm here to talk about brand storytelling, and to be honest, be a little bit more specific and precise about how you could look at your brand as if it was a story, and apply a lot of the same rules and principles and platforms that a writer or a director might when they were creating a screenplay or really writing a novel. A lot of those same things are principles you can apply to your brand. And a lot of you probably already do it, but I think it's just a different lens to kind of look through as a designer, as a salesperson, as a CEO or president of your company. Just a quick blurb on me. I started off about 15 years ago working for an apparel company called Volcom as a designer, just doing grunt work and trying to design t-shirts and kind of find my way. I worked there for a long time, and as I kind of grew up surfing and skateboarding, snowboarding in Southern California. You guys know that story probably. You might hate it. But I went from there to advertising, and I had a pretty long career in advertising, and I started off as an art director, working on like elder healthcare, horrible things. But ended up as a creative director on Volkswagen, and kind of reached the pinnacle of what I wanted to achieve in advertising, kind of working on a brand that I actually cared about, that I kind of identify with. And so at that point, I decided I'm done, I throw it all away, start a company, get back to kind of a place where I thought I could be authentic and actually kind of just talk to myself, right? Design a company from the ground up, based on kind of my beliefs and beliefs of my friends, and focus on the things that we really like doing, which was really traveling. I spent most of my childhood and really up until I got married and had 2 kids, traveling around the world, surfing, exploring, spending time both outdoors and in cities, to be honest. I looked at, Nepal or Iceland as an adventure, but also going to Paris or Barcelona as an adventure as well. So that's kind of how Roark started. I'll talk a little bit more about Roark just a tiny bit later in this presentation, because I'm sure most of you don't know what it is. So talking about those rules and the pillars of kind of good writing, purpose. Brand has to have a purpose. Your story has to have a purpose. writer sits down to create a novel, they usually don't just start writing. They have something they want to communicate. They have something important that they want to say that hopefully people care about, right? It's not just an arbitrary process. And I hope the designer would do the same thing when they set out to do a t-shirt graphic or an icon. Plot is really kind of how you communicate purpose without just hitting it right on the nose, right? What's that storyline? What's that plot? What's that compelling, evolving thing that people care about that you see in a film that you cherish or a book that you read? Every great story has a character, hopefully an iconic character, maybe two. So that's important in brand storytelling. Style is really kind of that way you communicate the plot, right? So through design of product, through aesthetic style of your design, the way in which you speak about your brand, that's all kind of style, right? That's what makes you and your brand unique to what you're trying to do. And then also setting, so that's kind of where this is all going down. People that you're talking to, you need to use to communicate your idea. So let's get into it real quick. In order to be a successful storyteller, a brand must succeed in defining the 5 components of a story. Once these elements are inked, they act as guides that will always illuminate the direction your company needs to take when facing challenges, when you get creative briefs, when you have distribution decisions, product design, everything. So in a way, if you look at your brand as if it's a story and you've defined those 5 things that I talked about earlier, it's almost like bumpers. It's kind of like cheating, I think. I know most of us as designers find inspiration, right, and create inspiration boards and apply that to your design. If you think about your company or your project, if it's its own story, it's crazy the bumpers that it kind of puts in place to keep you on track and keep you kind of on this road. This is when we were actually up in Iceland. A shot that Chris Burkhardt, who you guys might know, took of my partner. So, number one thing, I think this is the most important thing when any entrepreneur or designer looks at a task or a project. Does your brand, does your graphic, does anything, does it have a purpose? What's the point of it? The brand story is your Bible. To write a brand story, you must be able to distill your brand into an umbrella idea that moves people. It must be a cause that one can get behind and ultimately a notion and product that the world needs. So if you don't have purpose, don't start a company, don't even start a t-shirt graphic, don't create a product. Why? There's so many brands out there with no purpose that don't have a core idea that moves people. So this is the most important thing. If you don't have a purpose, you can't have a plot, you can't have a character, you can't have setting, you can't have style, you can't have any of it because it's not going anywhere. It's just, you might have a limited success with what you're doing one time. You might hit a home run with a product or a graphic, but where do you go from there? So super, super important to find your purpose and write it down. These are like, to be honest, Apple, Nike, Levi's. You probably learned this in design school, advertising school, the kind of most basic examples of purpose. Apple is kind of like the democratization of creativity, right? Nike, ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. Levi's is a little more product-based, jeans for the pioneering and innovative spirit. So all these companies obviously wildly successful for a lot of reasons, but I think if you go back to their purpose as a brand, why are they there, why do they exist, why do you care about them, it starts there. And ultimately you can't just make those things up and claim that they work. You got to work really hard at distilling them into kind of like an elevator pitch that moves people. So a great brand needs a literate plot. So your plot needs to make sense. You can't be, we all see movies, usually on airplanes it seems like, that make no sense, right? Like Netflix. Like it looks great, and you get into it, and there's no plot, or it meanders, it doesn't go anywhere, there's no purpose, and it's just a waste, right? So the proper definition of plot is a plan or scheme to accomplish some purpose. So you can see how that kind of idea of a brand plot applies to purpose. And the plot is kind of that way you're going to communicate the purpose, like I said before. So it's your marketing. I'm going to get into 3 or 4 specific things that it is. But you don't want to just go out there and tell everybody your purpose. You can't just like hit it right on the nose. You got to romance people. You got to create a mystique. You got to market. You got to create product that ladders up. So this is all kind of part of the plot. Let's read this. The plot is ultimately how you express your brand's story, purpose to the consumer. It must be coherent and illuminate the purpose of your story. Your plot is able to evolve more than anything else over time, just as a story would, as long as it fits beneath that brand purpose. So it's a very, very powerful tool and an interesting way to kind of think about your brand as this thing that lives for a long time, you know, and it can go through evolutions. It can change at times. It can change with some of the products that you make, as long as it ladders up to that purpose still. So that's stuff like campaigns, yearly campaigns, or campaigns that last a decade, or certain products you launch. So marketing, obviously one of those pillars of the plot. Every campaign and execution from TV to print, social media happenings should all deliver on the brand purpose and plot, or the plot will be lost over time. So I think as people that work for companies, we're also consumers, but because we work in apparel, design, outdoor, action sports, whatever it is, you kind of forget how easy it is to lose a consumer. You make 2 or 3 bad choices with products that you make, or you run 2 or 3 horrible campaigns, advertising campaigns in a row that aren't authentic to who you are, and all of a sudden your brand's on a cliff. And everything you've worked so hard for 5, 10 years is gone, and you gotta earn it back. So marketing is very important. So here's the Roark example. I'm not giving this because I think it's a great example or an epic purpose or plot, just because I kind of wrote it and I'm living it and I can communicate to you what it is. So at Roark, our purpose is to inspire people to go places they never thought they could go and provide a gear-free adventure. And the plot of it is really that we chase the bar-brawling hellion named Roark around the world, documenting his exploits to inspire a collection of products every season. So that's kind of what we go off, and I think, again, like, as you're looking at your brand, maybe evaluating a brand that's been around for a long time, trying to distill that into these 2 points is really, really important. And if you can't do it, then something's wrong. You got to figure it out. Product. I'm a marketing guy, so I'm like just learning more and more about product with our business, and I've always cared about it, but my design history was more kind of on the marketing side and t-shirt graphics and stuff like that, less product design. The product is huge, man. It's everything, right? It's what you're selling. And I think it's easy for marketing people to forget about the product, but the product is a huge part of the plot. The design of a product and merchandising decisions should be informed by the brand purpose and an outward-facing expression of the brand's plot. So when those stars align, it's pretty radical, right? Your marketing and your product are on point. They're both communicating back to this purpose that people care about and want to be a part of. It's rad. So as you start thinking about, as you're designing a product, like, what should the buttons be? Should they be brass? Should they be bone? Should there be no buttons? Should there be snaps? Whatever it might be. Should the cotton be organic? Maybe everything should just be black. All of that has to ladder up to who you are. So Patagonia, pretty easy example. Their t-shirts are all organic. That's part of their purpose, a huge part of their purpose. In fact, we've sold clothes in Patagonia stores for about 3 years, and we have to print all of our product on organic blanks exclusively for them with environmentally friendly inks. So they really hold to that, and we're happy to do it. And that's how far they go with their kind of collaborations. And this is, honestly, our involvement with them isn't even a collaboration. They just want us to be in their store. So it's pretty rad how far a lot of the companies, especially in outdoor, how far they go to stay with their purpose because they care. I think Apple, again, is kind of an interesting example. When Steve Jobs set out to democratize creativity, he looked at fonts, right? You guys probably know this story. Fonts at that point were boring and like Times New Roman, they're all digital and weird. He's like, let's do some crazy like Indian looking font. Let's do one that looks like a comic strip. These are now fonts that they'll hate and don't use. But for him, he said, what if I could stylize these things? And so when people write emails or write in briefs, papers, whatever, if feel like they can express themselves just a little bit, express an idea just a little bit better. So that was one of the first things that he did with Apple. Obviously, the iMac provided a platform for people, normal people, to be creative and have operating system and consumer programs that allow them to be creative. iTunes created freedom for the musician and for the consumer to purchase. I forgot iPhone, but iPhone took all that and made it mobile. So you can see how the product, obviously, with someone like Apple, is so crucial in leading back to that purpose of being. This one's really kind of rad too, I think. Part of your plot really is your company culture. Culture is part of the plot because the people that create it believe in the purpose. People that make the brand should not only understand the plot of the story, but should also be afforded the opportunity to live it inside and out. So if you guys read that Yvonne Chouinard book, Let My People Surf, anybody? Yeah. So, pretty cool book. I think, in a way, that whole book talks about what I'm talking about here. And the links, I know people that work at Patagonia. Maybe there's somebody that works. Anybody that works at Patagonia? Anyway, I know a lot of those guys, they really, live up to that, and they are surfing at lunch. They are taking days off to do the things they love that are kind of in line with who Patagonia is, or at least was. So don't forget about your people. I think at the end of the day, they're living and breathing, spirit of your brand, right? So as you hire or as you look for jobs, like, why not wrap it all up together and be kind of a living, breathing part of the brand and part of that storyline. So I felt like I probably need an interlude at this point. This one's provided again by Chris Burkhardt. That's actually me with that colorful polar surfboard down there. I remember actually paddling out there and thinking, holy shit, it's water's 40 degrees, the air is 10, I'm in like a 5 mil wetsuit, and I can't even walk. And I'm gonna surf on a single fin, which I usually don't do. And I'm kind of worried about what's gonna happen right now. And so in the moment, it was hard to appreciate the true majesty of what was going on in this moment. Oh, not to mention that's like my best friend that I'm paddling out with. And it wasn't until I saw this photo that was like, fuck, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm traveling the world. This is what it's all about. This is what adventures it is. Kind of being in this remote part of the world. There's no Photoshop there. I swear to God, there's nobody on the beach. No tracks, no umbrellas. Just kind of us with nature, and it's a pretty rad feeling. So I think probably at the end of the day, that's why we're all sitting here, right? Is to, whether it's this or going to Mount Rainier for the weekend, I'm sure wherever you guys go, just do that one out there. It's why we do this, and so I just wanted to take a breath. So number 3, every great story has an iconic character. Think back to all of the great novels that we've read or great films that have been produced. There's usually one iconic character, sometimes there's multiple. So it's super important, I think, for a brand to establish that character. Who are you? Are you Steve McQueen? Are you Steve Martin? What Steve are you? They're very different, right? And the brand is really that living and breathing thing that isn't much different than a person. It's really worth diving into that and defining who your brand is so that you can make choices. At the end of the day, when you write a headline, that should be a headline that your character would say at a bar. It's going to inform your tone. It's going to be part of your plot. You're on Instagram. How do you speak to your followers? What's the way? How do you respond? Are you irreverent? Are you funny? Witty? What's the deal? So when you start to instill all these things on like a high level, when you get down to, say an agency that works for you, a designer, a sales rep in Japan, whatever it might be, they get it. They get it, and they don't veer off from your storyline. It's kind of fun too, because you can ask yourself questions like, if your brand was a person, what kind of liquor would you drink? Is he a vodka guy, a whiskey girl? Would you rather go to a natural history museum or Mocha? What are his top 5 albums ever? What are his values? Is she sophisticated or does she like to party? Hopefully both. Perfect woman. So characters, very different types of Steve. right there. Figure out who yours are. I mean, you know, there's brands that, you know, like Polar that we all love, and those guys, Benji and Karma and those dudes, they know exactly who they are. They know what their tone is. They know what their character is, and they really don't get off track, and they don't really care what you think, right? So style. Style is that one thing that really comes down to what the designers are doing, what the art directors are doing, how the creative director thinks, all the way from marketing assets to product design, right? That's that thing that kind of differentiates your plot and your purpose in kind of the visual level, right? So that style kind of goes back to the character too, right? When you choose who your character is and what that guy smokes and what he drinks, it's also like, what does he wear? And what kind of design aesthetic does he appreciate, he or she appreciate? So it's a super, super important thing to remember. And once that style is defined, you know, it really can evolve as well, right? Because we're not all going to live in the 80s forever, hopefully. We're going to kind of change with the times, and hopefully your style and your aesthetic, going back to Apple, pretty apparent, like what they're all about. It's really minimal. It's always been. And when you see a new product, it's not really surprising when it comes out, right? It's all very literate. It all makes sense for who they are. So just, you know, looking at style and writers and directors, Jack Kerouac versus Hunter S. Thompson, similarities, but they're very different, right? Wes Anderson versus Francis Ford Coppola, both super visual directors, but big difference in how they execute. Sagmeister versus Raymond Pettibone, designers, illustrators, very different. Banksy versus Shepard Fairey, both political in their nature, both street artists, but both I think are super different in how they communicate it. One is somewhat anonymous, and the other one's kind of a celebrity. So that style, that tone in which you bring your product, you bring your whole brand message to market, is so important just to acknowledge and for everybody to be on the same page, I think. So setting's kind of the most boring one, at least in this presentation, I think, but I think it's important too, because you've spent all this time crafting the story about your brand, caring about the plot, caring about the purpose. At the end of the day, the setting is important because you're trying to talk to specific people, right? You kind of have targeted, I don't want to say demographic because it's a lame word, but you're speaking to a certain tribe, a certain person, right? And figuring out what media channels best reach that person, looking at your distribution channel and seeing who they are, where are they, and what are the things they like to do. It's just important to kind of understand what that setting is, because the story needs to make sense there, right? You could very easily do all of the first 4 things I talked about and then really fuck up the setting, and again, it doesn't make sense. So I think it's something important to think about as your story evolves, and it really is the right place for your character and your brand to grow over time. So I think that's it. Oh, this is this quote that I stumbled upon recently by the guy who founded the Paris to Dakar Rally. Adventure is a challenge for those who go and a dream for those who stay behind. And I think what he's trying to say, and I kind of look around this room, I know we all dream of adventure. We go to bed at night and dream about it, but it really will be a dream until you go do it. And I get the feeling that most people around here are actually doing it a lot. So it isn't kind of just this pipe dream, it isn't just this aspiration. You're actually out there living and doing it. And I think ultimately, I'm going to kind of shit on everything I just said in this presentation, consciously. When you take authentic people, like I imagine everybody in this room is, and pair them up with an authentic brand, everything I just talked about comes out naturally. And it's kind of germane to who you are and will flow. So I just want to point that out. In some ways, all this is academic, and I realize that. It may not be as important to you as it is to someone that's maybe not as authentic, right? That's at that PR agency in Santa Monica, and they don't really get your brand, and you got to hand them this brand Bible, right? So they get it. But again, I think that's why I'm really stoked to be standing here right now, and thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it. It's not very often that you get to work with authentic people, and I think we're all very lucky to be in a space where we can do that. I work for a great industry, so thank you for having me.